scope of this movie is really huge, because we're theoretically all over the world in huge environments. We have 100 sets in this movie. Without question, this will be the biggest puppet movie ever made.
The people, the crew, the team doing this movie is unbelievable. I mean, between the Kyoto brothers and, I mean, every single side of it. And Jim Doltz, who was brought in, you know, is basically a genius.
Jim was the only guy who knew how to do anything. You know, and then we've all kind of learned, and now it's kind of a team effort. But in the beginning, Jim was seriously the only guy who was like, okay, well, this is how you can do it.
The role of a production designer is to read the script, do tons and tons of research. And then you come up with like a concept of the movie, you know, hitting not just the look, but the moods of the movie and the metaphors. Matt Stone and Trey Parker wanted to do a parody of Bruckheimer films.
Well, police, get down on the ground!
They wanted to do a big action adventure. So we started with a very gritty Bruckheimer reality, but within that framework, it was open to a lot of theatricality.
My grandma and my dog go blue.
I was a huge fan of Matt and Trey's in South Park and read the script, and it was one of those things where I knew instantly that of course I had to do the project, and that this was a world that was inhabited by 2-foot-tall marionettes that can do a few things but can't do a whole lot. So physically the environment had a chance to help tell the story, and that's what hooked me. Is ultimately what I'm interested in is physical places that tell stories and connect emotionally. So it was a chance as a designer to really kind of affect the story in a way you don't get to really do in architecture. You don't get to do dancing, flying buildings often.
Go ahead and let him shake a lot like the Muppets as they're clapping.
One of the things that Trey and Matt were clearest about is that the comedy is provided by the marionettes.
Ooh, good shot.
So the environment is not there to tell a joke. The environment is there to create this believable world. At the same time, we wanted to create very different worlds.
What we came up with was that every place in the world was the way America sees the world. So this isn't really Cairo, this is kind of the dumbed down version of what Americans might think Cairo is. Same with Paris, same with Panama, and every city that we're attacking.
Well, Paris was the first set we designed, and in some ways it was the most challenging because it was so big and it was so recognizable. And what we thought would be interesting is to take all of the monuments you recognize from Paris and put them in one little plaza. So the Eiffel Tower, the Arc de Triomphe, the Louvre, and the Paris Opera House all exist on this quaint plaza with a paving pattern made out of cast croissants with little poodle topiaries. It's a combination of what real Paris looks like and the people who've only been to Epcot might imagine Paris looks like. Trey had the notion of how he was going to open the movie early on, starting in sort of foreground and then expanding this big view. So when it got to the big view, we wanted a huge payoff, a huge horizon.
One of the things that Jim Doltz and David Rockwell came up with is the idea of forced perspective in a lot of our sets, because you'll see a lot of big, expansive sets in this movie, in the exteriors especially, where it gives the illusion it goes back hundreds and hundreds of feet. We don't have that kind of room on our soundstage, so what we do is we create in our roughly 1/3 scale, which is our marionette scale, we build everything very exactly and very precisely. We build it as best as we can. But in the next scale back, in our forced perspective, if you take a 12-inch action figure and put that 10 feet behind this guy and make the sets reduce in size as they get further back, it gives the illusion of a lot greater depth. And we found that you can get away with quite a lot because it's generally soft focus. It's behind the action, so people aren't necessarily paying attention to it. And so, you know, we can literally print out a picture from the internet, cut it out on cardboard, and stick it on the puppet, on the 12-inch puppet, and that becomes a prop that reads just fine in the background.
And look. Dust.
The same kind of reductivist view that went into Paris, went into Cairo.
And we've cut. Reset, please.
And it was a chance to go into a totally new world. Tons of research on graphics and creating a very real, dangerous feeling world. And in the marketplace, the design strategy was capture the sort of color of the market, capture the messiness of the market, capture the diversity of the market, all with hard light coming from above. And then you go from the marketplace into these claustrophobic corridors that lead you to other rooms. And they lead you to this bar that's the terrorist hangout. So it needed to feel dark, it needed to feel dangerous. So the bar face is made out of toxic waste cans. There are curtains made out of coins. In the distance, you see palm trees that look very real, but when you get closer, made out of ripped dollar bills.
David Rockwell's input was really noticing the found objects.
As found objects go, I was going through a restaurant supply place and found a colander, and from that colander we added an umbrella that we'd ripped the skin off of, and then a baby nipple, and it became a satellite dish, which nobody will see, but it gave me a laugh. And these are our cheese graters. It's a cheese grater body with vegetable steamers added to either top, and then we just added for a little decoration. The finishing touch was the incense burners, and these were all electrified, and they were all throughout Cairo, in the tavern, in the bar. And when you put them next to the other ones, they just all kind of blended right in, and that was the fun part about this whole thing, because there's a little something in every set.
One of the Cairo background people is going to be carrying this little bin on their heads. And in the movie, I bet a lot of people are just going to see this walk by and they're going to understand that, okay, it's somebody carrying a bunch of stuff on their head. But when you look at this, it's just full of goldfish crackers. So if there are those folks out there that post these things on the internet saying, hey, we caught you, used a cheese grater, you're going to be up all night long with the DVD on this one, because there's just hundreds, literally hundreds and hundreds of things that are in there just for them to find.
We wanted to create a believable location that existed in Mount Rushmore that in some ways topped, James Bond caves and was the most amazing place we could think of.
Now you have to answer to America. Fuck yeah. So lick my blood and suck on my bones. America. Fuck yeah. What you gonna do when we come for you now?
All of these pieces of Mount Rushmore open up to allow these vehicles, which are sort of standard Army vehicles that we've redesigned and retrofitted with Team America's Zippy graphic program. And they land in this large building that feels like a crater inside of Mount Rushmore. And within that crater, there's a small, beautiful, modernist house that sits perched up on the waterfall that is the swankiest. It's kind of, the Rat Pack meets the absolute epitome of what modern architecture is right now. And they sit in swanky furniture and drink martinis from this waterfall bar.
But since that's so high style and so designed, a lot of those are real duplications of actual furniture. The Arnie Jacobson chair, the egg chair, that's in there. So that we have some real classic contemporary furniture that we just designed down to scale and matched it exactly. And we built the pool table from scratch. It's beautiful. It's the most coveted thing as far as I'm concerned. And it's just, we wanted a place that celebrated space and the luxury of it. And one room we did spend a lot of money on and in was Lisa's bedroom. But unfortunately, I don't think anybody is going to be looking at any of the decoration in her bedroom.
We have the distant mountains that you see lit up, but there's also candles behind her bed, small candles in the foreground, and all of those things that the net sum of them is this really luscious place, perfect for puppet sex.
I cannot believe that I actually have a Chechen standing here telling me when he's gonna take a delivery. Hello?
Perhaps we can be ready sooner.
Yes, perhaps you can.
Kim Jong-il is a fabulous character. We're in love with the location. We did a lot of research into what Kim Jong-il's world really looked like, which is pretty out there. And he is a pretty eccentric guy in terms of his taste.
only in the last year have lots and lots of photos emerged from North Korea. So we went through anything we could find that showed us what it looked like in Pyongyang in North Korea. And we modeled our sets after Kim Jong-il's palaces, the shapes and the patterns and the marble and the bad disco lighting and the ridiculous little fountains, this combination of kind of Liberace, dictator chic.
When you first see his palace up on the hill with all of the poor suburbs below it, which are made out of Chinese food containers, you get the sense of this kind of amazing, eccentric world. And when you get into it, it has a very, very bizarre use of color and ornament, and it really is about his perception of himself. There's portraits of him everywhere, but it's this huge palace with this little strange person moving through it in a color scheme that really picks up on what sort of North Korea looks like and what Kim Jong-il's world looks like. Very researched.
A really great David Rockwell influence was really adding pop color and heavy pop sensibility. That's what he's known for, vibrant colors and really, really pushing the envelope with his found objects. Missiles hanging from lanterns, grenades hanging from chandeliers, all over the place.
3, 2, 1, explosion! Back up!
Panama Canal is essentially an action sequence where the Panama Canal is flooded. So we're creating this backdrop for this action scene. It is this kind of acidy, strange yellow that we found in research from the Panama Canal. And if you'll notice, all of the foliage surrounding it is all made out of pot.
It wants to feel like a dangerous place, and so we've done it with, color and a lot of pot.
Because of the job that the art department's done, because of the set decorator, because of the wardrobe, because of the puppeteers, there's so much happening in this film. And all the guys that I work with agree that this is probably the best movie we will ever work on in our careers. And it makes me a little sad to say that, because I hopefully still have a big career ahead of me, but I also realize that this kind of a thing is not likely to happen again anytime soon, unless, of course, we can do a sequel.
When I read the script, I thought it was just impossible. The production was so large. What they expected the puppets to do was just so intimidating as far as the range of action. The numbers of puppets in the scene. My initial response to the script was a sheer delight. It was laugh out loud funny. Very rarely do I read a script and laugh out loud. And then it was sheer terror. How are we gonna do this? This is impossible, the most daunting thing I've ever read. It's an action movie non-stop. Full-on gun battles, fist fights.
Matt David!
You think of it, you think breaking. It's pure insanity.
I knew right away it was going to be hysterically funny, but I'm the one that looked at things realistically, based on experience. I know what it was going to take to do it, and I'm calculating this, and I'm going, how many people do we need? How many strings do we need? I immediately look at the problems that needed to be solved, and I went, holy cow, guys, do we want to get involved with this? And then when we read the material, we said, we can't say no.
Well, I don't know about you, Trey, but I think these look great. This is going to make a great movie.
I think you did a great job making these heads, Matt. Let's look at the ones you made, and then we'll look at the ones I made.
The first stage is design. It all starts with what the characters are going to look like.
There's just one problem. I don't look Middle Eastern.
The challenge with Team America was building a giant puppet film from scratch. Trey Parker and Matt Stone called me in for a meeting and wanted to start developing some characters.
It looks like it gets blonde pretty quick. You know what I mean?
Oh, you want just more tipping on it?
Yeah. All right, good. This movie will be sweet now.
In the early discussions, it was to basically establish a size first, which is 22 inches tall.
It's large-scale miniatures. Our puppets are 1/3 scale, meaning our 2-foot puppet represents a 6-foot human being.
For Team America, what Trey wanted was basically a young 30s group, late 20s, early 30s, of model-type Americans to portray Team America.
And we start out with, just physical designs of what they look like. Shortly thereafter went to prototypes, maquettes were called, little prototype sculptures.
Myself and a bunch of other sculptors started sculpting maybe possibly up to 5 heads per character, and the first character we worked on was Spotswood.
The name is Spotswood.
Once a style was set with Spotswood, I tried to contour all the sculptures into a style that was not over-stylized, it's really fresh and they're really strong, good characters.
Pretty much what my responsibilities are, to take the movie stars and turn them into marionettes and bring a lot of character to them when I can, but also keep them in that style of marionettes, which is a lot of fun.
None of the celebrities have been here to see their likenesses or help us figure out what they look like.
That is the fag way.
Nor has anybody asked their permission. That's kind of the South Park mode. If they want somebody in a movie, they just do it.
I farted once on the set of Blue Lagoon.
We're starting our sculptures as realistically as possible. Once we get the likeness of the actor, from there we then dial back to give them that kind of creepy marionette feel. Helen Hunt took all of a day and a half, so they're going pretty quickly.
Once the sculptures are completed and signed off on, we actually put them into a mold process. Basically, we encase the original sculpture in plaster so that we can then split apart, remove the clay, and now we have a negative of the original character. Third stage is casting that mold in foam. The molds are cored to create a really thin layer of skin. So we take various liquid components, whip them up into a foam material, inject them into the molds.
We are making the armatures and the foam hands and everything for all of the little hands for all of our puppets right now. They're all starting off as little wire and urethane cores, basically, which we will be inserting into the mold, lining up with the fingers, and then injecting foam latex around. That gets cooked in an oven for several hours, depending on the size of the piece, and we'll open it up, we'll have a little guy like this.
When it comes out, we get a very thin, flexible, lifelike skin material.
Here, as you can see, is obviously a terrorist because he's brown.
Using brown paint, we delineate terrorists from other people in the script.
We start with a blank foam rubber head of one of the characters, and then I begin airbrushing the color on them. And then hand painting the eyebrows on. And then when the airbrushing and coloring is all finished, the skin is removed. It's then given to the next link in the chain, which then glues the skin down to the mechanical skulls.
I have to actually pull and stretch the faces to get them into the appropriate positions and then glue them onto the mechanical substructures so that when the mechanics work, that they drive the rubber faces.
We had never had a head this small with this much sophistication built into it.
The heads, they're empty shells that we then fill with a bundle of servos and linkages to make all the facial features operate, the eye blinks, the eyes left and right looking, and smiles and jaw and everything. So the head is pretty packed with little items there.
These are full animatronic heads, and in order to sync the dialogue with the jaw, they're using software that was developed by a company named Gilderfluke, and we've modified it and applied it to the Kyoto Brothers puppet control system. Basically, the input sticks here will manipulate the jaw, and we record it and play it back with this software.
Please, Gary, I'm not from Hollywood. I'm not going to fuck your mouth, and my time is extremely valuable.
Yes, that's nice. We have a great bunch of artists working for us, from mechanical engineers to seamstresses to hairstylists. I mean, we have people working on wigs that they're hand tying strand by strand wigs, making eyebrows and eyelashes.
The level of detail from miniatures to wardrobe has been top notch.
Part of what appealed to me was the fact that it was something I'd never done before. And so I knew it would be a unique challenge. We started finding very small zippers, very small buttons, and fabrics, just traditional fabric stores, but just looking for the smallest scale and everything. I don't think that the director had any expectations. I think it was wide open. So I think they got a lot more than they were expecting. I felt from the beginning like if this didn't have great attention to detail that it really wouldn't be worth doing. I felt like these costumes would be as if you were looking at things under a magnifying glass, because even though the scale is very small, once you put it on the big screen, they would be magnified.
When we come to a place like this, it just scares us because it's still just our dumb little stupid gay script that we wrote, and then we come somewhere here and we're like, oh my God, all these people are really working on this. Like, it's kind of freaky.
The cool thing that we do about our job, our business, is that we bring characters to life in a truly handmade fashion. It's real, it's tangible. It's not a computer imagery that's going out there. It's a real object with real light falling on it, with great artisans working on it. Everything is handmade, and that's really the great thing about the whole movie.
This film stands for everything that is great about America. We're out there trying to protect the world for our values, whether they want us to or not.
Yeah.
Really, what all the puppeteers were expecting when we brought the team together was like, okay, so we were gonna have a locked script on this day, and then we will have all this time, the puppeteers are going to rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, and then we will get there and we will do it. And we were just like, we don't work that way. You know, it's basically like, we're gonna make stuff up all the time, and the movie's gonna completely change as we go. And everyone was telling us, you can't do that in this world. We've learned it's true. I mean, it makes it super hard.
You know, there's certain things that marionettes can't do. Matt and Trey don't know that, so they ask us to do some of those things, and sometimes without the benefit of extensive rehearsals, you know, the guys have to work it out, so we have to think on our feet and try to give them the closest approximation of what they've asked for, often with very comic results.
After the breath, he's gonna spit at the guy. So that's gonna be a real, you know, a real jerk of the head forward.
Here we go.
We've had great success, I think, in pulling off all the things that Matt and Trey sort of impulsively come up with on the spot. We've had, our biggest difficulty has been coming up with the instant requests that they have. We have our call sheet, which indicates one thing, which is what we plan on when we come in for the day, and invariably that's pretty much tossed out the second we get to the first shot.
The improv on the spot is when it happens for some reason. It's when the funny stuff comes. And we've tried to force the funny stuff to come before that when you're just sitting there with a script, and it just doesn't happen. I mean, it happens when everything's kind of there and you go, oh, I know what they should do, you know? And so that's gonna be really, really difficult in this movie.
It makes it easy too, because then you don't have to write a very funny script.
Yeah.
Well, we can just write a not funny script and then just figure out how to make it funny
we'll make
later.
it funny later.
One of the things we're doing in this one that I've never seen in any other marionette production is the level of action that we're putting into this. We've got giant explosions and characters running and jumping and driving vehicles and exploding in some cases. So we're taking marionetting to the extreme factor.
We've blown puppets up, and that's always funny, but these guys get riddled with bullets, you know, blown through plate glass windows, rappelled down lines coming out of helicopters. It's a blast.
Fucking die! Drop her! Drop her! Drop her!
And cut! The scope of the production is a real challenge just for physically getting the elements on set in front of the camera. Because since I coordinate the puppeteers and getting them on stage, we had this opening scene in Paris, and we had 18 puppets out there. Now, some of the puppeteers were suspended from a gantry, which was like a 21-foot gangplank that people stood on and puppeteered from, and then other members of the puppeteer staff were in condor buckets suspended above the set. So the logistics of getting the puppeteers up in their positions, then getting the puppets shuttled up to them, find their marks, communicate to them, really was the most difficult thing in the overall production.
Well, the basic marionette, it takes several people to operate it depending on the gag. And basically it takes one person above the puppet operating the strings. Sometimes there's another puppeteer up there assisting him depending on how sophisticated the movements are, manipulating different strings. Sometimes we'll add a puppeteer below on rods supporting the puppet, doing other little more sophisticated gestures. If it has to walk in or do a very sophisticated articulate gesture with the arm, so we'll add puppeteers. And then we have another puppeteer doing the facial articulation on the radio control transmission units. To pull off the acting part of this movie, the heads have gotten very sophisticated. We have little radio controlled servos that control all the facial articulation. We have eye blinks, eye movement left and right, brow movement, jaw movement, smile and frown. So it's really capable of vast expression. And in the case of the male heads, we have 9 servos controlling those functions. In the female heads, we have 7 servos in their heads, and actually 2 more in the body because their heads are a little smaller. The animatronic portion of this is really fascinating. It's all controlled by a system here at Kyoto Brothers, we call it CAPS, Computer-Aided Puppeteering System. But for this project, it's been supplemented by a system called Gilderfluke, which is a hardware, software-based apparatus that actually allows us to pre-program dialogue with sophisticated lip sync.
Yeah, I'll get it. Action.
Put down your weapons now! Put down your weapons now!
We took our first preliminary dialogue test. We nailed the articulation on the lip sync. It was perfect, and it was enunciating all the words and emoting. And they said, this is too good. It's actually too scary. When you see these little 21-inch figures talking and emoting, it becomes scary. And they don't want these guys to be scary. They want to have fun with the technique. So they've actually made us take the articulation down quite a bit.
Inevitable.
One more time?
Inevitable! Things are inevitably going to change! God damn it, open your fucking ears!
Well, the Kyotos have developed this programming system to enable us to drive these characters' faces live, and we can be spontaneous with our performance depending on what Trey wants. So we're actually the actors that he hates, providing the emotion for the characters.
I remember the first time we met. You were a simple Broadway actor, afraid to get in my limo because you thought I wanted you to perform oral sex on me.
A basic marionette puppet in this production has anywhere from 8 to 10 strings per puppet. Generally 4 on the head, 2 on the shoulders, 2 more on the legs, 2 on the hands. So say when we cut it all down, we have 6 strings per puppet, and we have 10 puppets out there. That's 60 strings of puppets interacting, crossing with one another. So it can be a mess when somebody drops a leg bar or crosses action. The bulk of our jobs are usually trying to hide the technique. It's supposed to become a living, breathing character, technique aside. Here, they've embraced the fact that they're puppets, and if humor comes from the fact they're puppets, it's all the better.
Trey made it clear in the beginning that he wanted to exploit the puppet movement, the marionette movement. So he wasn't afraid to show the strings or show some funky movement because that was where the humor came from in contrast to the action. The fact that he's using the puppet as a puppet for the laugh has never been done before, and anything goes.
There's no chance we can ever be together?
Only if you could promise me you'll never die.
You know I can't promise that.
If you did that, I would make love to you right now.
I remember we were just messing around with a Barbie and Ken doll one day, kind of going, all right, if we did this, could we have a puppet sex scene? And like, how would it, and we just shot a whole sequence with Barbie and a Ken. And which, if anyone would have walked in on us doing, they would have thought we were deeply disturbed. But we put it to music, and it just, even that worked pretty well.
Yeah, even that was funny.
And so it was pretty interesting because we got there on the day, and it was sort of like we're trying with all the strings, and we're just like, wow, they can't do anything. And so we're like, you know what, just go a little tighter. And I just sort of got in there and grabbed the legs of this guy and the back of this and kept that out of frame and just kind of moved him around like this and got him and flipped him in different positions, and we just started sort of doing what we were doing with the Barbies, and suddenly
What's amazing to me is when you see the whole thing cut together, it doesn't look that much different than real people having sex.
Yeah.
Clumsy and weird looking.
For us, the puppet sex scene was probably the most innovative thing we've done. Everybody's always talked about puppets having sex, but this time we really did it, and top notch. Just beautiful, beautiful lighting, beautiful set, and the puppets just do amazing things.
I can't help it, this just feels so right, and I don't want anything to mess it up.
Shh. There's not a thing in the world that can mess this up.
Speed.
Background action.
What's great about live puppetry is just that. It's live, it's immediate, it's real objects being photographed with real light, as opposed to some of the computer technology. Something tangible that a director can direct on the moment. We will always have a live puppeteer component there, operating the eyes, the brows, the smiles, the emotion portion of the performance.
Oh, Carson. Carson.
Matt and Trey, they love to keep it fresh. They like new ideas when they think about it. And so to offer them that flexibility, the live component has the ability for them to change lines on the spot, get the actors, the puppeteers, living the moment and playing out a scene.
1, 2, 3.
Probably the singular thing that makes a puppet work well is reactivity, either responding to the dialogue, the moment on stage, the script, emotionally projecting through little joysticks into the puppet's face. Then it's good. If you feel it and it comes across, the audience will feel it and it'll really sell a scene.
Where most actors use their own physical face and arms and body, puppeteers are actors that have to kind of transfer everything into their fingertips. So we're transferring our performance through our bodies into our hands, into the character's face. It's kind of strange.
Scott Rudin, the producer, said, I think we should get Bill Pope to shoot this. And we're like, okay, who's Bill Pope? And he's like, well, he shot The Matrix. And we're just like, what? Like, why would he do
He's not
this?
gonna do
Like,
this movie.
that's like he's probably one of the biggest cinematographers in Hollywood. And then he called back going, yeah, Bill wants to meet with you guys.
And I called him up and said, let's do this. This is, I love South Park. I love the script. And they said, I think it's with puppets.
He said, man, you don't have to sully your career with this work. And he said, no, I don't want to. I want to sully my career. I said, all right.
That was my first question to them. Why don't you hire somebody who does miniatures? Because I don't know anything about miniatures. And they said, we want an action guy.
We met with him and he's just this super mellow, cool guy, and basically he was like, I'm sick of shooting green screen. The idea of shooting everything practical and a real explosion on a real little car and and all this was as appealing to him as it was to us.
This is an action movie, and I've done other action movies. So I think Matt and Trey wanted somebody who has done action and understands the genres, and we have to treat it as a real movie. The sets have to be impeccably detailed and outfitted so that the ridiculousness only comes from the slight weirdness of the puppets themselves. Otherwise, we treat it absolutely straight. These are the same moves, the same lighting that I would use on Name Your Action Star and Name Your Action Movie.
What have we got? Looks like George Clooney and Liv Tyler, 20 yards.
One of the great things about working at a scale is you can bring in a 50-foot Technocrane and make what is the equivalent of a 150-foot move across huge spaces. So we can start on the locks of Panama and pull back and go through the streets of Panama and meet people, and then go back up and see the width of Panama. And it's all done with one simple crane move.
We didn't even really know what a technocrane was until we started doing this movie. And he was like, we'll get a technocrane up here, we'll do this whole thing, we'll move back. We're like, you can do that?
Well, why don't we get way up here and go all the way back to this? And Bill's like, well, because that would be like in real world, that'd be like a 120-yard technocrane that doesn't exist. And we're like, that's why we should do it. That'd be sweet, And so he very quickly, was like, yeah, okay, that's cool. And so it was basically like, since we do have the smaller scale, we can actually kind of do a move you could never see in the real world.
Almost every scene takes place in a different set, in an elaborately different set.
We thought at least, since we can't keep the puppets moving, let's keep the sets moving.
Every scene goes someplace else. This is an international thriller. So we're covering the entire world. Korea, Mount Rushmore, Paris, Cairo, Panama, you name it, we can cut to anywhere. Sometimes I look at the monitor, we have 3 units going now. It looks like we're shooting all over the world, we're actually all on the same stage. The helicopter shots are some of my favorite stuff. Just a photograph, a flat, big photograph spread out on a table, and not even a very big table, of Paris. And we put a few, sprigs of parsley in it, and maybe the Eiffel Tower. That's the only thing that sticks up out of the photograph. And that's it. And it's really remarkable how convincing that is, how much our eye is taken in by photographing a 2-dimensional object spread out with maybe one 3-dimensional object on top of it. You totally buy it. It's like shooting a regular movie, except that I am 18 feet tall and 4 feet wide, and my camera is as big as a small truck, and the actors are the regular size. And so we are just bulky, clumsy things that exist in this little world, and we're always in the way. Once you start thinking of their world as the real world, you realize that we're the clumsy ones. Well, you can forget about overhead lighting, and you can forget about backlighting,
does. It lights the strings, and the overhead lighting blocks the marionette strings. So you're restricted to some other forms of lighting. You know, you got underlight and side light and direct front light, and that's your small quiver of arrows that you're working with. But when we bring in the condors to puppeteer from, we had to build lights underneath the condors, so we didn't have shadows of the condors.
Bill has used kinoflows, which are basically movie fluorescents. And on the bottom of the bridge where the puppeteers stand, he's been able to put these lights directly underneath so that there aren't any dead spaces as far as light is concerned. He was able to use our bridge as a lighting platform, which was really great.
Well, every shot in every movie is a piece of choreography. Everybody's working all together. In this case, an actor, which is the marionette itself, is made up of 7 or 8 people, and it's quite a piece of choreography to see.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It's a lot like shooting a silent movie. I know there's sound in it, but it's all playback sound. And we have sets going on at all times. There's a set being built as we're working on this one, and the condors are moving all the time, and people are hammering on the same set that you're on. It is a real action movie. We treat it seriously.
And shooting and action.
It just happens to be done with puppets, and it happens to be done with a sort of ridiculous content, but Matt and Trey's point seems to be that all action movies have ridiculous content, and they are using this extreme to point out what that ridiculous content is.
Jesus, titty fucking Christ, I could have sworn she was telling the truth.
That's why they call it acting. Come on, we gotta find Lisa.
In the middle of any action scene of utmost seriousness, they're likely to have their characters turn to one another and discuss their feelings, which is a standard beat in action movies.
I'm sorry I've been so hard on you. If there's still a world left when this is all over, I'd like to buy you a beer.
Come on, let's go. We're running out of time.
What it shows to me is their analysis of the action genre is extremely astute, and they use this as an essay on that genre.
What is that supposed to mean?
Oh, come on, Sarah. You mean you never realized Joe has feelings for you?
That was tough for us because, we obviously don't do action. Even in terms of writing it, we're like, how do you do this stuff? And that's where we sort of got a new respect for Bruckheimer, basically, because as much as we were ripping on his movies, we're like, damn, that dude can do some action,
It isn't fair! Jihad! Jihad!
We've pretty much tried to blow up everything that we've made. So we make it, we shoot some stuff on it, we figure out a way in the story to blow it up. Because if not, it's just gonna go collect dust someplace.
Every single day you have a new challenge in the way of pyrotechniques. My work, you can't read in a book, there are no classes, there are no apprenticeship programs. You have to learn on the set. There's a million ways of making a different explosion. And I applied everything I've learned in the past to this movie. On this, we want to make it look cool. And that's the key. I want to make totally different explosions, something exciting, something with a lot of power, and something a little over the top.
This is a part of where Team America is bursting into Paris and stopping terrorists that have a weapon of mass destruction. And so they come in a helicopter and a Hummer and a jet and, come and stop the terrorists. And stopping the terrorists blow up most of Paris.
Damn, I missed him!
Here we are in Paris, France. And what you see behind me is a replica of the Louvre Museum. The whole action is one of the missiles goes straight for the building and into the pyramid. And then eventually all hell breaks loose and the whole thing goes in a matter of under 1 second.
We're doing it old school. This is all in-camera effects. This is not CGI. There's no CG fabrication of puppets or explosions. It's got a real human feel to it. It's got soul to it. One of the things on this film is that we try to pattern a number of shots off of very famous films. One of them was, of course, Independence Day, where a rolling fireball comes right down the street and kills everybody. Fire has only one way to go, and that is straight up. You can't roll it down the street, you can't control it in that manner. So what we do is we tip the entire miniature sideways, 90 degrees. We have the fire down at the base on the floor, and it's going to come rushing through the set and up towards the camera, which is at the very top. One of the keys to this sequence is the camera rate. A film usually travels at 24 frames per second. On this particular shot, we're going to shoot at 144 frames per second. So it's going to slow it down radically. And on the big screen, you're going to see this churning, melting, boiling, rolling fire coming straight down the street. What's going to happen here is a giant flash is going to go off, and as soon as that goes off, it's going to go boom, 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 and just white out the entire frame. At the same time, my friend Jeff over there is going to be pulling all of these puppets down and out of the picture, so they're going to be just swept away. The bad guys have put a briefcase full of explosives underneath the hull of this ship, which is carrying, well, weapons of mass destruction, very small ones. And we do a blast of water, which is going to come from underneath the hull, and we're going to have a fireball at the same time representing the bomb. So you got water first and then the fire coming up after that. And then we bring down 1,000 gallons of water. I got the best guys in the business. I'm really happy with them. And we worked together on Independence Day, Godzilla, Volcano, Panic Room, doing all sorts of effects, and hey, bring it on.
Oh, it's gonna be hot in here in a minute. It's gonna get hot. There goes Tokyo. What Godzilla does.
All I can say is I hope they leave this theater saying, man, that was bitchin', let's go see it again.
You in the robes. Put down the weapon of mass destruction and get on the ground. Well, really, Team America is just all about fighting world crime. They believe that the whole world just loves them and that they are just the cops that everybody needs.
Well, police, get down on the ground!
They're the ones with the ships and the guns, so they're the ones that have to do it. And they've all got a good attitude about it.
All right, Sarah! Yeah! All right,
Step it to it!
We stopped the terrorists!
They live in Mount Rushmore, that's their base, and they all kind of have their specialties, but really they all are just pretty good with guns and ships.
Hey, terrorists! Terrorize this!
Hello, young man. Congratulations on a terrific performance.
Oh, thank you. I don't believe we've met, Mr.
The name is Spotswood.
There's Spotswood. He's the mentor of the whole group, sort of the guy, you know, the old guy that put it all together and that sort of manages everyone's feelings. He's actually my favorite character in the movie. He's got the best lines.
Please, Gary, I'm not from Hollywood. I'm not going to fuck your mouth, and my time is extremely valuable.
So they have their specialties like Chris, who's a martial arts expert.
Kia!
And Joe, who's like the quarterback.
Natural born leader.
All-American kid.
The war is out there, man, out there! Now pull it together!
You have Lisa, who's the terror psychologist, so she knows how the terrorist thinks.
Usually a case of malignant narcissism brought on during childhood.
And we have Sarah, who's the clairvoyant. She's an empath. She can read your mind from 50 yards.
I sense that you're slightly confused right now.
And then they bring on Gary, the hero, who's the actor.
And just what does this have to do with me?
Our only hope is to have somebody act like a terrorist.
The last piece of the puzzle to make this group really kick ass.
Hizo!
But really, they just go around shooting people. It was just like, wouldn't it be cool in this day and age of everything's computerized and everything's, you know, CG, it's like, it'd be cool to just take a giant step backwards, sort of like the same way we did with animation.
Wait, I've got an idea.
Because at the time we were just like, yeah, that could be easy, like just make a movie with puppets instead of actors, and that sounded great. You know, looking at it, you think, yeah, that looks pretty easy, but once we got into actually doing it, we realized it's really tough.
Action. Maury, catch him right in there. Pull him out. Ugh.
They're really small, so they're really hard to have sex with.
This isn't about sex, Gary, it's about trust.
But we're gonna see if they'll mock one up that's a little bigger, because we were already running into a lot of problems with trying to have sex with these puppets.
You can't be serious. Oh, I am serious. Look, this is my serious face.
We're like, that's how we should do this, you know, take it totally seriously, because that's super funny.
A big part of the movie is basically doing a big, huge Hollywood spectacle event movie, but with puppets.
Basically, if you just took a Bruckheimer movie and made it with puppets, it would be the funniest.
That was originally what we wanted to do. We wanted to redo Armageddon with puppets and not change a line.
He basically does make comedy. I mean, it is just, he just doesn't realize it because he's a turd. Watching a puppet in a car go off a cliff and crash makes you laugh. Because you know there is this actual, real, physical little thing that got jacked up. In the same kind of way that, you know, South Park originally, we made out construction paper because there was something funny about knowing it was this real little piece of construction paper getting burnt and getting hit by a car or whatever it was. But really, the main reason we wanted to do puppets was just because we hate actors. All of them.
Everybody.
Every single goddamn one of them.
Hey, David!
That's why we do all the voices in South Park and we do animation, is because no matter how big or small the actor, they always just have, you know, such an attitude and think that they're all rad, and, you know, there's no lamer thing you can be in the world than an actor. It's the most self-serving. I'm just going off on a rant now. The whole thing about South Park was basically us making fun of celebrity, you know, when we were just little bastards sleeping on people's floors and we were all pissed off at Hollywood. It was like, we just wanted to do a show that ripped on celebrities and how much people love celebrities, and so it's really just another way to do that. Because now we can have all the celebrities made into puppets and then we can kill them. We're just trying to tell a real sort of serious story with real feelings and emotions.
I promise I will never die.
But done with puppets,
it'll fail
be funny.
miserably because they're puppets.
Yeah.